Yo, what's up, everybody? Appreciate y'all for coming out to this PCC video. I'm your host, Billy, here with my co host.
Say.
That was crazy. Here with my co host, Zay. Yo, Zay, tell me what's currently going on, yeah?
Oh man, have I got some nerd shit for you, Billy? All right, so
I'm
last
here.
week it was reported. Now these are obviously take this with a grain of salt. Obviously, this could be fake. It could just be people just drumming stuff up. But this is the first time that we've actually got like real, outside of Jean Grey. This is the first time that we've got like real X Men like casting type rumors. So it was reported last week that Marvel is looking at for the characters of Rogue and Beast, Odessa Azion for Rogue, and
Ew.
I think Peter Claffey for Beast. I'm gonna tell you some of my thoughts on these castings and whether I think these actresses and actors will be able to pull this off. But obviously, I want to hear your thoughts as well, Billy, after this. So, as far as Odessa Azion goes, I think that casting her as Rogue is honestly that makes sense. She is like
You think so?
around the same age. Yeah, I think she is around the same age as Sadie Sink. You do want a young X Men team that we're
For
hearing,
sure.
but
For sure.
I think you want to cast her as Rogue because I think that with Rogue you want someone who can kind of who can come in and be like a wild child, like a big personality type. I think that Odessa Zion has the chops to do that, and I don't think that she would be
Mm,
too expensive. When we do have to think about how expensive some of these actors are. I'm sure they spent
right.
a lot of coins on Sadie Sink. So with the rest of the actors, they probably want to go a little bit cheaper, in terms of like
Can
how
I
much
can
they
I ask you a
cost.
question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What role did Odessa do that made you think, nah, she got it? Like, what was the role? Was it Marty? Was it I Love LA?
I think that there were like some rogue things in Marty Supreme, like in terms of like some of the trauma. But really what I was impressed with was Grand Army. I felt like in that
It's a good
that
show,
that was
yeah.
like that was like some rogue stuff, like for real, in terms of like really being on the front lines, like a
Hmm.
large presence on screen. You know what I mean? And is like a character
Yeah.
that you want to consistently watch and is entertaining. That is
With this,
Rogue.
I have a
So
question. With this new version of X-Men, are they sticking more with the, because we've had this conversation, right?
yeah.
You are not a fan of the way that they adapted X-Men so far, like separate from the MCU, because it's not like comic book accurate. And people actually, they'll actually be able to hear that on the pod, the Project Hail Mary pod that's already out.
Yeah,
So go
can't
check
wait
that
for y'all
out.
to hear that part. Yeah.
But it's but you very clearly are somebody who's like, listen, the X-Men that we currently have of past, they aren't comic book accurate, so I don't like that. I was gonna ask, is X-Men 97 more comic book accurate than the movies that we have? And then there's like a follow-up to that.
There's only like one character in X-Men 97 that was truly butchered, and that was Sunspot. Everybody else
Got you.
is pretty
Was
much
was was
accurate to
comic
who
book
they
accurate.
are.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So Odessa Zion is playing Rogue. Do they do the Rogue Magneto storyline? And if they do, who is doing Magneto?
I don't see them. I honestly, if I'm being real with you, I don't see them doing that because that's like
Yeah,
a tricky thing in terms of like Magneto's age and Rogue.
exactly.
That's
Yeah,
weird. Like they don't explain. That's the one thing that in X-Men 97 that kind of pisses me off. They don't really explain like how old Rogue was when all of this happened. They ignore that part. They just say, "Oh, Magneto and Rogue had a relationship in the past." Well, we know Rogue is a little bit on the younger side. So it's
right.
like when yeah, and it was said that like Mystique brought her to Magneto to like do some other things. There's like a ton of details or whatever, but yeah, I don't think the MCU was actually gonna touch that part.
Approach that at all.
Yeah, I don't think
Okay.
they're gonna touch that part at all.
So
Actually, I think they're
we're
gonna
still,
completely ignore it.
so if it's a sliding scale of the X-Men movies, the live action X-Men movies, Hugh Jackman Jones that we have, and the comic book accurate, you think they're sliding more towards the movie aspect of it, where when we see Rogue, she's more heavily dealing with the fact that like her how her powers affect her rather than the relationships that she has with like other people. In relationships, I mean like relationship with Magneto and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. As
Because
much
in the
as I am
movies,
like
I was
as
just
much
gonna
as I
say
am
because
like a
now go
as
ahead.
much as I am like a comic book, like, oh, do what the comic books do, you can't always do. Like, I do get the fact that you can't always do what the comic books do, because the comic books are not always written well. Like, they're a
Right.
foundation for a reason. You know what I mean? They're there for a reason. But this is an adaptation. It's not like they're just gonna put the comic books on screen. I would love for them to do that, but that's not really possible.
Yeah.
So, I get the fact that it's an adaptation, and and there are some things that I don't want them to adapt. You know what I mean? Like in the first run of the, like, when the X-Men first came out, when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby first worked on these characters, Jean Grey was not a real character. She was like a person for Professor X and the rest of the boys in that house to lust after, which is not the character that she eventually became, and had added all these traits to her and stuff like that. I don't want them to adapt that. I'm gonna be 100% with you. The original '05 run of comics, they were very little bit, creepy. They were meant for boys to read this and be like, "Oh, I relate to this." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like there are some things that I 100% get if they don't adapt 100%. I do want to talk about Peter Claffey though, because I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah, that
seen.
was gonna be
You
next. Yeah, yeah.
watched A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, right?
Bro. Bro, yes, bro. I'm loving that this was the person that was like discussed because I have so many opinions on it.
Yeah.
I have so many opinions on it.
So I do want to say, like, just before we get into like whether Peter Claffey is a good fit for Beast, I want to like just do some baseline things of who Beast is as a character, like, just in case the audience listening doesn't really know Beast. Um, Beast is like, he's a big guy, yes, but he's also like mostly a nerd. Like, he reads books, he's into science, you know what I mean? He quotes Shakespeare, a lot of Shakespeare all the time. He's into like the arts and like philosophy. He's really like a I respect cinema type of guy. You know what I mean? And so he's kind of a dork. Kind of similar, he's actually very similar to me. So, do you think
Very similar to me. Got it.
Do you think watching A Night of the Seven, because I haven't watched A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, I haven't seen Peter Claffey in anything, so I don't know if he'd be a good casting or not. But do
I
you
think
think like he can fulfill that role?
I think he's gonna body the beast role. I think he's gonna do
Mm,
amazing. Honestly, to be honest with you, my issue isn't whether or not he can do it. My issue is what the fuck is this nigga doing, yo? Because you signed up for a Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which they've come out and said like, yo, we want a Night of the Seven Kingdoms to go on forever.
yeah,
We want they basically said like without actually saying it, they basically said we want Peter Claffey to die in this role. And so you have that. You have HBO committing to the show long term. And the first season, like I don't know what it did critically, but amongst the people, like I've never heard anybody shit on the show who's actually watched the show. So clearly people are loving it. So you
yeah,
have this IP that is a long term commitment, and then allegedly you sign up for another IP that is also a long term commitment. So my thing is like, okay, are you like I don't know. Is this a good thing? Like for Peter Claffey to have two IPs under his belt that are like such long term commitments? Is there a world where they don't clash? Like there's so many questions that come up in my mind with him being the rumored casting. You know what I mean?
yeah. You would think with these two like long term things, like you said, like it would be hard for him to try to like can take Sebastian Stan for example. Yes, he's in the MCU. He does the Bucky stuff, and he does a good job at being the Winter Soldier. But he also like has this one long term commitment, but he does like the artsy stuff like outside of it. You know what I mean? Like
For
he's
sure.
he's won Oscars before. He played Donald Trump. He was great as Trump. He's done these like really artsy out there things, but then can come back to the MCU and be that character that we all know and love.
But you know
If
why I think that's different?
Yeah,
Because those are all one offs. As consistent as he is with those, they are, hey, I'm doing this project for a set amount of weeks and I'm right back to whatever you guys
Yeah,
need.
that's exactly
You
my
know what I
point.
mean?
He's not gonna be able to do that. Like he's not like I hope that he, finds fulfillment in doing like the X-Men stuff and the Game of Thrones stuff. But if he's a guy that wants to do those solo artsy things, brother, it's not happening.
Yeah, you're committing yourself to a life of being I hate to say this, but you are committing yourself to a life of being like a corporate slave.
Yeah.
Like
And you're gonna be like,
HBO's gonna have super strict rules on what you can and cannot do. MCU's definitely gonna have super strict rules on what you can and cannot do, and how they intersect is going to affect how you maneuver. Now, in a perfect world, it works out great. Night of the Seven Kingdoms is the hit that it is, and X Men, the way that they're adapting it, is the hit that it is, and you are top of the world. You're a household name because of this decision that you made. But I do think this is one of those decisions that is like a pivotal point in Peter Claffey's career.
yeah.
This, like, when we look back at Peter Claffey's career, and again, obviously these are rumored choices, so we don't know if this is gonna happen. But if he ends up taking the Beast role, if he ends up taking the Knight of the Seven Kingdoms role, we're gonna look back and be like, this was the moment. It either went really well or it went really, really wrong. So I don't know.
Yeah, man. Listen, if more power to him if he chooses to do it. Like I didn't know who he was before 2026, and it seems like he's on the rise to, be a huge, huge, huge star. Also, the MCU is just spamming Game of Thrones actors. Let's get as many Game of Thrones actors as we can in the fucking
Are they?
universe. They are. You've got Kit Harington, he was in Eternals. The
He
other guy,
was.
from the Starks was in the Eternals. Rob Stark was in the Eternals. Um,
Was he? Oh, he was.
he
Holy
is. He's
shit. Yeah.
like the main villain
Yeah,
of
yeah, I
Eternals.
forgot. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot. My
bro.
bad.
Like they're just Game of. Were you in
And
Game of
then
Thrones? All right, bet.
Shorty who damn, they just got all the Starks because the Stark sister was in X-Men. She played Jean Grey.
Oh yeah, she was. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yo, I forgot about. That's great. Wow. Yo, more power to you, MCU. Yo, but I do think both of these I would be completely fine with these castings if this was the route they chose to go.
To be honest
I mean,
with you, you convinced me of Odessa as Zion.
I
Maybe
did.
it didn't sound like that. Maybe it didn't sound like that on
Let's
like
go.
with the people watching it. But going into this convo, I wasn't convinced about Odessa Zion, and somehow I'm leaving this convo thinking, all right, maybe she got the chops. Peter Claffey, I'm here for. I'm just more concerned about his career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I feel you. I just wonder like if Odessa is our rogue, who are we casting as Gambit? We need somebody that, chemistry, you know what I'm saying?
For sure.
I don't even know if they'll go with Gambit in the first film. There's a chance that he's not in the first movie.